The music stopped. The air grew thick with silence. In the basement of St. Helena's School of Arts, Gabriel Santos stood frozen at the piano, his fingers still hovering above the keys. The whispers had already started. 3 judges exchanged glances, but it was too late. Gabriel had heard everything, and now they would hear him. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. The grand rehearsal hall of St. Helena's School of Arts gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Morning light streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Ornate moldings framed the ceiling, giving the room an air of old-world elegance that had intimidated students for generations. Gabriel Santos slipped through the double doors, clutching his worn messenger bag. His sneakers squeaked against the floor, a sound that seemed to echo forever in the hushed atmosphere. He wore simple jeans and a faded blue button-down shirt that had seen better days. At 26, Gabriel was older than most first-year students, and it showed in the fine lines around his eyes. "You're late," Professor Lancaster called out from the piano. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, matching her rigid posture at the bench. "We start at 9 precisely." "Sorry," Gabriel mumbled, taking the nearest empty seat. The bus was— "Save it," Lancaster cut him off with a wave. "We're discussing the upcoming charity showcase. Attendance is mandatory for scholarship students." She emphasized the last 2 words, making sure everyone knew exactly what Gabriel was. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Most students wore designer clothes and carried instrument cases that cost more than Gabriel's monthly rent. They belonged here. He was just passing through, or so they thought. "As I was saying," Lancaster continued, "this showcase determines which students represent St. Helena's at the International Classical Competition. Dean Harrington and several benefactors will attend, so excellence is expected." She glanced at Gabriel. "Some of you might want to reconsider participating." Marcus Whitmore, the department's star pianist, smirked from his front row seat. His cashmere sweater probably cost more than all the clothes in Gabriel's closet combined. "Professor," Marcus called out, "will we be performing in order of seniority?" "Some of us have been preparing for this opportunity for years." "Talent speaks for itself, Mr. Whitmore," Lancaster replied. "But yes, typically, our more established students tend to secure the final performance slots." Gabriel stared at his hands, calloused from years of work, not just from playing. Nobody here knew what those hands had done before they'd touched the keys at St. Helena's. Nobody cared. After class, Gabriel lingered in the hallway, studying the portraits of famous alumni. Names he'd only read about in music history books. People who'd walked these same halls, sat at the same pianos. Lost? Marcus appeared beside him, flanked by 2 classmates. "Staff entrance is down the other hallway." Gabriel forced a smile. "I know where I'm going. Do you?" Marcus stepped closer. "You stick out like a sore thumb here, Santos. This place has standards, traditions. People like you might get in through some diversity scholarship, but that doesn't mean you belong." The words stung, but Gabriel had heard worse. "I earned my place here. Did you?" "Interesting." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Because I heard Professor Lancaster only accepted you because the board is pushing for more diverse candidates. Quota filling, essentially." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Believe what you want." "I heard you play during entrance week," Marcus continued. "Basic technique at best, community college level." He chuckled. "Don't embarrass yourself at the showcase. There are people who've sacrificed everything to be here. You have no idea what sacrifice means," Gabriel thought. But he remained silent as Marcus and his friends walked away, laughing. In the practice rooms that afternoon, Gabriel found himself assigned to the smallest one with the oldest piano, a forgotten Yamaha upright with yellowed keys. He'd stayed late, waiting for the prime rooms to clear out. Even now he could hear Marcus in the room across the hall, working through a Liszt piece with theatrical flair. Gabriel placed his worn sheet music on the stand. Nothing fancy, just photocopies held together with a paperclip. He flexed his fingers and began his warm-up scales. The familiar routine calmed him, the progression of notes like an old friend. A sharp knock interrupted his practice. The door opened without waiting for a response. "Santos," Professor Lancaster stood in the doorway. "I need this room for a real student. Ms. Winters needs extra practice time for her showcase piece. Behind her stood a timid-looking girl with an expensive violin case. But I reserved this slot, Gabriel protested. And now you're unreserving it, Lancaster said flatly. Scholarship students must accommodate paying students. It's policy. It wasn't policy. Gabriel had read the handbook, cover to cover. Where am I supposed to practice? Lancaster glanced at her watch. The basement has a piano. It's older but functional. You can use that for today. The basement? That's where they store the broken instruments. Yes, well, beggars can't be choosers. Mr. Santos, either take the basement or forfeit your practice time entirely. Gabriel gathered his things, avoiding eye contact with the violin student who had the decency to look embarrassed. As he left, he heard Lancaster's voice, not quite quiet enough. Don't worry, dear. Some students simply don't understand the standard of excellence we maintain here. The basement piano was worse than he'd imagined, a battered upright with several keys that didn't work and others that stuck. The room was cold and smelled of mildew. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows. Gabriel sat on the bench and played a C major scale. 3 keys were completely dead, and the sustain pedal made an ominous creaking sound when pressed. No one could possibly practice here, which he realized was exactly the point. He closed the fallboard and dropped his head in his hands. Coming here had been a mistake. He didn't belong, just like Marcus said, just like everyone thought. 10 more months, he told himself. Just get the certificate and move on. You don't need their approval. The next day, the humiliation continued. Gabriel arrived early for theory class, determined to make a good impression. But when he entered the lecture hall, the only empty seat was in the back corner. As he approached, Marcus stretched his legs to block the way. Sorry, that seat's taken, he said loudly. By who? Gabriel asked. There's no one here. My talent, Marcus replied. Several students laughed. It needs its own seat. Maybe try the janitor's closet. Heat crawled up Gabriel's neck. He swallowed his pride and found a spot on the steps instead, balancing his notebook on his knee. Professor. Berg entered moments later, frowning at Gabriel's unorthodox seating arrangement. Mr. Santos, we have chairs for a reason, he said sharply. Before Gabriel could explain, Marcus chimed in. He came in late, Professor. We saved him a seat, but he insisted on sitting there. Gabriel opened his mouth to protest, but Berg cut him off. I expect professionalism from all students, regardless of background. Find a proper seat immediately, or leave my classroom. Burning with humiliation, Gabriel gathered his things and moved to the now vacant chair that Marcus's friend, mysteriously, vacated. The rest of the class passed in a blur as he fought to keep his composure. During lunch, Gabriel sat alone in the courtyard, nibbling a sandwich he'd packed from home. The cafeteria was too expensive on his tight budget. Across the lawn, he spotted Marcus holding court with a group of students and one of the younger professors. Their laughter carried across the space. He tried to focus on his music theory homework, but the words swam before his eyes. A shadow fell across his notebook. Hey, you're Gabriel, right? A petite woman with dark, curly hair stood before him. I'm Sophia Reyes. We're in Lancaster's class together. Gabriel nodded, surprised anyone knew his name. Mind if I sit? Without waiting for an answer, she dropped onto the bench beside him. You looked like you could use a friendly face. Is it that obvious? Sophia laughed. Lancaster's an old battle axe, and Marcus is her prized pupil. They've made things difficult for students before. She lowered her voice. Especially scholarship kids. Gabriel sighed. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be. Sophia unwrapped her own lunch, a fancy-looking bento box. I heard you practicing. Yesterday, before Lancaster kicked you out. Gabriel stiffened. You heard that? My practice room was next door. She smiled. You're good. Really good, actually. Thanks, but clearly Professor Lancaster disagrees. Sophia shrugged. Lancaster only hears what she wants to hear. She decided what you were the moment you walked in with those sneakers instead of Italian leather shoes. Gabriel glanced down at his worn footwear. I wasn't aware there was a dress code for talent. There isn't, Sophia replied, but there is for St. Helena's social hierarchy. She nudged his shoulder. Are you playing in the showcase? I signed up, but after yesterday, you should play, Sophia insisted. Show them what you can do. Gabriel shook his head. And give them another opportunity to humiliate me? No thanks. Running away won't change their minds, Sophia said quietly. Trust me, I know. Before Gabriel could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Dean Harrington was crossing the courtyard with a small entourage, heading directly toward them. That's the Dean, Gabriel whispered, straightening his posture. And our resident celebrity, Sophia added. The Dean, a distinguished man in his 60s, stopped before their bench. His gaze landed on Gabriel. You must be Mr. Santos, he said, extending his hand. I've been meaning to welcome you to St. Helena's. Gabriel stood, awkwardly wiping his hand on his jeans before shaking the Dean's. Thank you, sir. Professor, Lancaster mentioned we had a mature student this year. It's refreshing to see someone pursuing their passion later in life. The Dean's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Though I understand you've had some adjustment difficulties. Gabriel froze. Sir, nothing to worry about, Dean Harrington continued. Not everyone transitions smoothly into St. Helena's rigorous environment. Professor Lancaster has expressed some concerns about your preparedness for our program. From the corner of his eye, Gabriel spotted Marcus approaching with his entourage. Dean, Harrington, Marcus called out. I was hoping to catch you before your meeting. Ah, Mr. Whitmore, impeccable timing as always. The Dean turned back to Gabriel. Mr. Santos, perhaps you should consider our community outreach program instead. Less pressure, more appropriate for your background. The suggestion hung in the air like a slap. The Dean was encouraging him to drop out of the regular program. With all due respect, sir, Gabriel replied, his voice steadier than he felt. I'd like to continue with my current track. The Dean's expression hardened slightly. As you wish. I look forward to hearing you at the showcase then. He turned to Marcus. Mr. Whitmore, walk with me. I'd love to hear about your competition. Peace. As they walked away, Marcus glanced back with a triumphant smirk. Sophia squeezed Gabriel's arm. You okay? Gabriel nodded stiffly. Peachy. Don't let them get to you, she said. The showcase is in 3 days. Just focus on that. But focusing became impossible. The next morning, Gabriel found his name crossed off the practice room schedule. When he confronted the department secretary, she claimed it was a computer error, but offered no solution. Then, during his private lesson, Professor Lancaster spent the entire hour criticizing his technique, his posture, even the way he turned pages. Your fundamentals are severely lacking, she declared. I suggest you reconsider your showcase participation. We wouldn't want St. Helena's reputation tarnished. By the 3rd day, Gabriel was considering dropping out. The final humiliation came during the showcase rehearsal. Each student had 10 minutes to practice on the Steinway grand piano that would be used for the actual event. When Gabriel's turn came, Professor Lancaster checked her watch. I'm afraid we're running behind schedule, she announced. Mr. Santos, you'll have to forfeit your rehearsal time. What? Everyone else got their full time. Are you questioning my judgment? Lancaster's voice was ice cold. Perhaps you'd like to explain to Dean Harrington why we're behind schedule for his event. As if on cue, the Dean entered the hall with Marcus at his side. Is there a problem? The Dean asked. Gabriel looked from Lancaster to the Dean, then to Marcus's smug face. Something inside him snapped. Yes, there's a problem, Gabriel said, his voice rising. I've been systematically excluded from every opportunity at this school. My practice times get cancelled. I'm relegated to a broken piano in the basement. And now I'm being denied rehearsal time that every other student received. A hush fell over the hall. Lancaster's face turned scarlet. Mr. Santos, this is completely inappropriate. What's inappropriate, Gabriel continued, is the way I've been treated since day one because I don't come from money, because I worked as a janitor to afford music lessons, because I don't fit your narrow definition of who belongs here. Dean Harrington stepped forward. That's enough, Mr. Santos. No, it's not enough, Gabriel moved toward the piano. I deserve my rehearsal time like everyone else. Marcus stepped between Gabriel and the instrument. You're making a scene. Maybe this proves you don't belong here after all. Step aside, Marcus, Gabriel said quietly. Or what, you'll clean the floor with me? Marcus sneered. A few students gasped. Sophia appeared at Gabriel's side. "Let him play," she demanded. "Stay out of this, Ms. Reyes," Lancaster warned. "Why are you so afraid to let him touch the piano?" Sophia pressed. "Is it because you know he's better than your precious protégé?" Marcus laughed. "That's absurd." "Then let him play," Sophia challenged, "unless you're scared." The entire room watched this exchange with bated breath. Finally, Dean Harrington raised his hand. "Very well. Mr. Santos, you have 5 minutes. Not to waste any more of our time, but to put this matter to rest." Marcus stepped aside with a mocking bow. "Be my guest. Play us a nice little tune." Gabriel approached the piano, his heart hammering in his chest. This wasn't how he'd planned to reveal himself, but he had no choice now. The whispers continued behind him as he adjusted the bench. "Probably knows chopsticks," someone murmured. Triggering snickers, Gabriel closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, without opening any sheet music, he placed his hands on the keys. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 filled the hall, not the simplified version taught to advanced students, but the full, brutally complex concert arrangement. His fingers flew across the keys with precision and power that silenced every whisper. The notorious opening might seem deceptively simple, but Gabriel immediately displayed a touch and control that revealed years of mastery. As he transitioned into the thunderous development section, Gabriel's body transformed. Gone was the hunched scholarship student. In his place sat a consummate artist, commanding the Steinway with authority that couldn't be taught, only earned through thousands of hours of devotion. The piece demanded everything: superhuman dexterity, perfect timing, emotional depth, and physical endurance. Gabriel delivered with such intensity that several students stepped back as if physically pushed by the sound. His left hand handled impossibly complex patterns, while his right soared through melodic lines that brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened listeners. In the cadenza, the most technically demanding solo passage, Gabriel's fingers became a blur. Notes cascaded in perfectly articulated runs that would challenge world-class concert pianists. The music built to a fever pitch, his body swaying with the crescendos, completely surrendered to the piece yet in perfect control of every nuance. When he hit the final movement, several students had their phones out, recording in disbelief. Professor Lancaster stood frozen, her face drained of color. Gabriel's playing wasn't just technically flawless, it was transcendent, filled with a lived experience that couldn't be faked. As the final chords reverberated through the hall, Gabriel opened his eyes. 5 minutes had turned into 12, but no one had dared interrupt him. For several seconds, absolute silence filled the space. Then Sophia started clapping. One by one, other students joined until the applause was deafening. Someone whistled. A girl in the back row wiped tears from her cheeks. Gabriel stood from the bench, his shirt damp with sweat, his breathing heavy. He turned to face the crowd. Marcus stood slack-jawed, his complexion ashen. Professor Lancaster gripped the edge of a nearby chair, her knuckles white. Dean Harrington removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly, as if unsure what he'd just witnessed. "My 5 minutes are up," Gabriel said quietly. The dean cleared his throat. "Mr. Santos, where did you... who taught you to play like that?" Before Gabriel could answer, Professor Lancaster found her voice. "This is impossible," she stammered. "You've been deliberately hiding your abilities. Why?" Gabriel looked her directly in the eye. "I wasn't hiding anything. You just never bothered to..." "Listen." Marcus stepped forward, his usual confidence shattered. "You can't possibly know that piece without years of professional training." 14 years, Gabriel replied. "Starting with a keyboard my mother found in a dumpster. Then lessons from Mr. Abernathy at the community center. Then night classes at the state college while I worked days. Then private study with Dr. Chen when he heard me playing at a hotel lobby where I worked as maintenance staff." The dean approached slowly. "Dr. Chen? Dr. Liang Chen, the concert pianist?" Gabriel nodded. "He took me on as a student 6 years ago, pro bono." "But your application," Lancaster began. "Listed all of that," Gabriel finished for her, "along with recordings of me performing Bach, Liszt, and yes, Rachmaninoff. Did you even listen to them, Professor? Lancaster's face flushed deep red. That is, we receive many applications. Not many from janitors, though, right? Gabriel gathered his things. I didn't come here for your approval, Professor. I came because Dr. Chen said a certificate from St. Helena's would help me secure a teaching position. That's all I want, to teach kids who can't afford places like this. The dean adjusted his tie uncomfortably. Mr. Santos, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Your talent is extraordinary. St. Helena's would be honored to showcase you at the charity event. As the closing performer, Lancaster added quickly, our featured artist. Gabriel looked around at the room of students, some stunned, some smiling, some still recording. His eyes met Sophia's and she gave him a thumbs up. I'll think about it, he said finally, slinging his bag over his shoulder. As Gabriel walked toward the exit, Marcus stepped into his path. Wait, he said, his voice stripped of its usual arrogance. I've never heard anyone play that piece like that, not even recordings of Horowitz. Gabriel waited, but for once, Marcus seemed at a loss for words. I owe you an apology, Marcus finally managed. I made assumptions, unfair ones. Gabriel studied him for a moment. Yes, you did. Would you consider showing me how you approached that cadenza, the fingering you used? The request hung in the air between them, a grudging admission that the student had become the teacher. Gabriel didn't answer immediately. He let Marcus feel the weight of the moment, the reversal of their positions. Finally, he nodded. Practice room 3, tomorrow, 8 a.m. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. I'll be there. Gabriel continued toward the door, where Sophia waited. That, she whispered. As they exited, was the most badass thing I've ever seen. For the first time in weeks, Gabriel laughed. It felt pretty good. Good? You just became a St. Helena's legend. They'll be talking about this for years. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warmer somehow. Gabriel took a deep breath of fresh air. Want? To grab coffee? Sophia asked. I have a feeling you've got more stories to tell. Actually, Gabriel replied, I need to call Dr. Chen. He's been waiting to hear how things are going. Let me guess. You've been too embarrassed to tell him the truth. Gabriel nodded. Until now. What changed? He looked back at the imposing building of St. Helena's School of Arts. I remembered why I'm here, not for them, for the kids who were like me. Well, those kids just got one hell of a role model, Sophia said. So, coffee after your call? Gabriel smiled, a real smile this time. I'd like that. In the days that followed, St. Helena's underwent a subtle transformation. Practice room assignments were redistributed more equitably. Professor Lancaster announced a review of the scholarship program to better support our diverse talent pool. And in a surprise move, the dean established a new community outreach initiative, with Gabriel Santos named as student coordinator. The charity showcase sold out for the first time in its history, largely due to rumors about an extraordinary new pianist. When Gabriel took the stage as the closing performer, the audience included not only the usual wealthy donors, but also a group of wide-eyed children from the same community center where Gabriel had first learned to play. As Gabriel bowed to thunderous applause, he spotted Dr. Chen in the front row, beaming with pride. Beside him sat an elderly woman with Gabriel's eyes, his mother, experiencing her son's triumph with tears streaming down her face. 6 months later, Gabriel sat in a bright classroom at the newly established St. Helena's Community Music Program. A dozen children from diverse backgrounds watched as he demonstrated proper hand positioning. Music isn't about where you come from, he told them, thinking of his own journey. It's about where you're willing to go. Outside the door, Dean Harrington observed quietly, nodding with satisfaction. On the wall hung a framed photo of Gabriel performing at the showcase, alongside a simple plaque that read, "Talent hides in unexpected places." Listen carefully. In the staff room later that day, Gabriel found a note on his desk. The elegant handwriting belonged to Professor Lancaster. Your student's recital this weekend. Front row seat reserved for me. Still have much to learn. L. Gabriel smiled and tucked the note away. Some lessons weren't found in any textbook, like the power of perseverance, the courage to stand your ground, and the simple truth that talent doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits patiently to be discovered by those willing to truly listen.